Hey everyone, welcome to Sport Fishing on the Fly. Today we're going to show you a different way to nymph. We call it sink-tip nymphing. You know, it's early spring. The run that we have in front of us here is a little bit deeper, a little bit faster water. We know the fish are sitting on the bottom because there's not a lot of dry fly action yet, and that's where the fish are sitting. So we want to be able to do is get our nymph out and down, bouncing along the bottom, because that's where the fish are sitting. Well, what I've got here is a 12-foot sink tip, type 6 sink tip. I got about 2 feet a leader, and I got my nymph on the end of this sink tip setup. All I'm going to do is cast up, let it float through, and hopefully pick up some fish. So in today's show, we're going to show you some different techniques that you can use to try and catch these fish and hopefully detect if you are catching a fish or not, because that's, of course, the secret to it. So sink tip nymphing, that's today on Sport Fishing on the Fly.
Hi everybody, and welcome back to Sport Fishing on the Fly. As Grant said earlier, we're going to do a little sink tip nymphing today. Now what we do sink tip nymphing is very similar to using a strike indicator. A lot of times when you use a strike indicator, you're almost high sticking, which means we're going to keep the rod fairly high in the air, cast the line up into the run, allow your fly to swing and bounce along the bottom, and actually tail out into the run. Now when you're using a strike indicator, it's different. You're casting up, and you don't want any movement on that fly at all with that indicator. Whereas with sink tip nymphing, you're allowing the sink tip to go down to help sink the fly to get it on the bottom. And you're actually going to be moving the fly as it bounces along. It's not actually going to be dead drifting. It's actually going to be moving slightly because you want to keep in tune with your line. You want to make sure your line is always fairly taut. So here's how it's going to look. I'm going to spool off a little bit of line. Just going to get my line out, and all I'm going to do is just quarter upstream, meaning I'm just going to go about the 2 o'clock position upstream, allow my fly and line to sink, and now as you can see I'm just slowly moving the fly back along the bottom, staying in tune with that rod and fly line, and just allowing the fly to skip along the bottom. I'll take another cast and show everybody. So again, just almost quarter upstream slightly, allow the fly line to get down a little bit. Keep your rod tip fairly high, and now keep your line swinging through the current. And right now that fly is bouncing along the bottom and just slowly moving in towards shore. And I'm just waiting for any stoppage in my line. If that line stops hesitates for 1 minute, I'm going to set the hook because there's a fish on. And let's go through it once more again. Again, quarter upstream into the current. Allow the fly to get down on the bottom with your sink tip. Now pull on your line just to get the slack out of the line, and just allow that line and fly to swing through the current. And that fly should be just ticking along the bottom. You should actually feel it hook up once in a while. Oh, and there was a strike too. And I wasn't quite on the ball. And you should actually feel your fly or your line just pull tight once in a while. And if you do feel that, it's good. It means you're on the bottom or you're actually getting a fish. So remember, every time that you feel that line tighten, pull on that line and set the hook, because the odds are you're going to have a fish on.
Ah, here we go. Another little guy. Wow, nice fat feisty guy. Let him play himself out a little bit here. Once we get him happy and on his way, I'm going to show you how I was fishing it, because as you can see behind me here, it's a little bit slower water, so I'm down more towards the tail out of the pool. So fishing a little bit different than what Don showed you how he was fishing it up in the faster water. So, oh, this water is so cold. Springtime, there he goes, just like that. Well, we didn't get to get a good look at him. We saw him splashing around there, which was good. And of course the barbless hook just pops right out, which is why we say use barbless hooks, because it makes it easier to release the fish, don't hurt the fish. Okay, what I'm going to do is show you what I was doing here, because like when Don was doing his casting up above in the faster water, he was quartering it up because the water's all pushing towards him. So he quarters the cast up, gets his rod up nice and high so you can feel the nymph bouncing along the bottom. Well, here I got a lot of flatter water in front of me. If I quarter the line up, there's no eddy coming in, but the water is just going to sag the line down, and I'm not going to be able to get a good feel for the fish on the end of my line. So what I want to do in this situation here is actually cast a little bit more, almost quarter down. I want to get a good cast out, get the line nice and tight, So what I'm doing here is just getting the cast out, right out to the edge of the run there, and then make sure you keep it nice and tight. And again, the key is to feel that fly down to the bottom. If you feel the fly bouncing along the bottom, then you know you're down where the fish are. You got a chance to pick up a fish, and that's where I picked that one up. I actually cast out about another 30 feet on the cast before because they seem to be just a little bit further out. You can see it's real calm inside here, and then the run is, oh, hit a rock there. The run's a little bit further out, so you want to be right on the edge of that run. So we'll strip some more line off and see if we can plug another fish. Well, maybe we need to keep working our way down. It's a lot flatter water all the way through here, but last time we were out, Don was here a week ago and caught most of his fish up in the faster water. They might be sitting in the slower water right now just because of the time of day. So I think what we're going to do is go to a break. We're going to move ourselves down a little bit and try some of the tail out of this long run here. Anticipation of the first take.
Yeah, well, look at this guy. This poor little fella, he's had a bobber on him and all this stuff. So what we're gonna do, bring him in. It's just a little guy. Oh. What we're gonna do is get rid of all this garbage that's on him here. Got another hook in there, we'll get rid of that. Look at there, and that's got all that mess. A nice little rainbow. Nice little fella, took the nymph. Great way, again, sink-tip nymphing. And there he goes. Now I'll try to get my fly out of that mess. There's our little fly, barbless hook. Nice little guy. Now here's what we have. Somebody fishing with a bobber, obviously. I don't know what kind of line this was, but obviously not very foolproof to the fish. Somebody beginning. And here we want to focus in on is a barbed hook. Now, this barbed hook, you can tell it started to rust out. It is barbed, and that's been sitting in the fish. You know, the fish was kind of crazy enough to take this in the first place, but there's a barb on here. That fish would have never gotten rid of that hook. It would have taken him weeks. He was probably going to perish, actually. I don't think he was going to live through dragging all that stuff around. That's why we really stress the fact of using barbless hooks. If you have a barbless hook, if this was barbless, he would have already shaken that right away. Within probably a minute, he could have shaken this big hook because it does weigh a lot, and it could have just sat on the bottom of the river without causing that fish problem. But since it was barbed, he was probably gonna perish just because of that. So remember, if you're gonna go out, even if you are gonna use jigs and things, try to use barbless hooks. So what I'm gonna do now is take this into my truck and go and dispose of it in the dump or somewhere. When selecting some water to work, when you're actually gonna do some sink-tip nymphing, the water you want to approach is the quicker water. Now, as you can see out in this flow that I'm going to approach now, it comes off some rocks, fairly shallow water, and then goes into a deeper pocket and then through the tail out. Where we're going to try to focus is in through the faster water, again into the body of the hole, and then we'll work the tail out. But where we always want to start is up in that faster water, because as the water warms up through the springtime and into summer, those fish are going to move up into that highly oxygenated water, which is in the riffle runs and the shallower water.
He hammered it. Gonna get my line up here and get him in where a little calmer. So this guy was actually stripping in my line when he hit it, so he liked the movement. He's skipping out of the water. Okay, let's slide him in a little tighter here. Get out of this faster water. So they seem to be sitting down in the pocket a little bit more than out in the run right now, which is good. I mean, that's why we do the technique that we do. You let it slide through, and then you strip it back like it's a woolly bugger, and that's actually when he took it, as opposed to taking it as a nymph tumbling down the bottom of the river. Okay. All right. A little scrapper in. That's if he wants to come and play here. Come on, let you go. Come on. Holy yeah, lots of life in him. Not that big. You know, of course, where we're at here, you can get some pretty big fish, but this guy's not all that big. But you can see what kind of energy he's got, and if we can ever get a chance to look at him, I don't want to touch him yet until he's stopped. Then you'll see the markings on him, which are really quite nice for a rainbow. Okay, you done? There, done. Get my hands wet. They're upside down. fly pops out. There he is there. Lucy coming in for a look. Yeah. There we go. Get this back in the water. Won't take long, hopefully. There he goes. Right on. I'll see as long as my fly's still here. Let me show you the fly that I'm using. Got a rubber leg stonefly there. And show you what else I've been using today. Another fly that we've used on the bench before. That one there, which is a Box Canyon Viagra. And then we've got our stonefly nymph, which we've used before too, or stone bugger we call it. Well, today in the technology, I want to show you a knot that we use a lot of the times, especially when we're wet fly fishing like today, our SINK-TIP nymphing technique. It's called a loop knot, and why it's so good is, as you can see here, is the fly line isn't firmly attached to the fly, so it allows the fly a little bit more natural motion. It's great when you're chironomid fishing, but it's also really good when you're using stonefly nymphs and buggers like this one here. So let me show you how to tie it. First, I've got to clip off the old knot. And what you do first is form a loop with your line. So you just form a nice loop. You want to have enough line at the end of your loop. What's that, about 2.5 inches there? And then what you're going to do is put your fly on the end. So you put the fly on. And what you're going to do is pull your line towards the end. And what you want to do now is go back through this loop 4 times. Now, everybody's got different ways of doing this. I always use my mouth to do it. So go through once, and I grab it, and then what you want to do is just keep going through. You want to go through 4 times. Takes a little practice, this method. Once you got it through, what you want to do is pull your line back down and get it to however long you want the loop to be. And that's about the length I like the loop, which is, I don't know, maybe 1 centimeter. So we'll go from inches to centimeters. Now if you remember the other technology I talked about, making sure you lubricate everything, very important here again. And what you're going to do is pull on, I've got the tag end with my thumb and my forefinger, I've got my other line in my other hand, and I'm just going to pull it tight using both. So pull tight on the line, I'm going to pull tight on the tag end. Pull tight on the line, pull tight on the tag end. And that's it, that's the loop knot. Trim off the excess, and there you have it. Has a chance to dangle as much as it needs to. Now, be careful, because this knot is actually a very strong knot. So if you've got a fisherman's knot above it or a weaker knot above it, remember, if the line's going to break, it's going to break at the weakest point. And this knot is a very strong knot, so you may end up losing a lot of your leader if you've tied a really good knot here and your other knots aren't as good. Anyway, let's get back to the SINK-TIP nymphing, because it's a very productive way to catch some fish.
Oh, well, getting a little cooler now. They just really started to turn on. And man, oh man, this guy is decent sized fish. Yeah, this is a nice fish. Get him in. Got my net right here. But actually, we found that they weren't sitting in that real fast water. They're actually tending to sit more in the deeper, shallower water, or deeper, slower moving water. And that's where we're getting these guys. There he is there. We'll bring them on over, give everybody a little peek. Let's put this in here.
Big chunk of meat.
Yeah, that was a decent sized fish actually. All right, in the top lip. Get the hook out of here. There it goes. There he is there. He's, I don't know how big the net is, but...
I don't know, it's about 22-inch net or 23, something like that.
22, yeah, so he's like a 18-inch fish or so. Nice fish, nice and healthy. Got the good colors to him, real nice. He's gonna want to go right away. Let him revive a little bit. Yeah, and he's got the nice colors. You can see the nice colors he has right there. Let's hold him up on the net for a minute. Pretty fish, real pretty fish. There he goes, right between your feet.
So I'm going to do is cast a little bit upstream here again. I got the line laying in front of me and it's loose. So what I want to do is if I lift my rod tip up and still hang on to my line, I pick up all that slack line that's there and I can actually feel the fly again. So if I get a hit with a fish, I know I can set. So important to always have your line in control with your fly, because whenever you get a hit, you got to be ready to set. So that's called high sticking. I've heard people have different names for it. All you're just trying to do is get that line up off the water so you make it tight between, I guess, the reel or your hand and the fly. Be ready to set on anything. I guess the other thing you want to keep doing too is keep moving down. Take 3 or 4 casts in one spot, don't catch anything, move down about 5 or 10 feet, keep trying it again.
Alrighty, another little guy. Little babies, we've been catching a lot of these little guys today. The big guys haven't quite come out and play yet, but let's let this guy go here. Just barely hooked. There he goes. I think one thing we want to touch on too is, here's the recommended setup today. We're in big water, really big water, potential for some 8-9 pound fish. So we have the GL3 Loomises today, 9 foot 9 inch 8 weights. The reason we like the 8s is because when we're using this sink tip with the rubber leg stoneflies and the big woolly buggers, you got to be able to set that hook. We've also done the 5 and 6 weights. We found we didn't quite get the good hook set, so gone with the 8 weights because again we have the potential for the big fish. We have our nice big 3.8 LX Islanders. We have the Rio VersaTip line on, and what I do is I have a 200 grain shooting head. So I've got a 200 grain sink tip. I've cut this sink tip back to about 12 feet. I like this ideally about around 10 to 12 feet because it gets my fly down to that depth I'm fishing, around that 8 to 10 foot mark. Gets it down there in a hurry, and with our weighted fly. So again, quick setup, 8-way rod, nice big reel, Rio VersaTip line, and a 200 grain sink tip, even to a type 6. Works really well. That's a nice guy. Look at the colors too.
Oh yeah.
Beautiful. I'll hold that for you.
Thanks.
Gee, you know, we still haven't got any of the real big guys yet. We've had some good hits on there. But we'll keep working it. You know, it's just the sun's come out again a bit. It's getting late. I'm liking our chances a little better now.
Yeah.
That's a nice fish. Nice little chromie.
Little chromie, yeah.
Just shows you what a healthy fishery this is, though. We're fishing at our home waters here in the Columbia. It's just, you get every size. You get those guys there. You get them up to 12, 15 pounds sometimes. You get everything.
It's really good. And you know what's about today's show is lots of people like to dry fly, but today we're wet fly fishing. And this is the time of year when you could fish a dry fly all day long. You go home with nothing. Or you can learn to fish the bottom of the river where the fish are sitting, and you come up with fish like that.
And again, this sink tip technique with the so good because your dry line, it's all visual. Your dry line is on top of the water.
Yeah.
The sink tip's under with your fly, and you the whole thing and see it.
It's a technique. Yeah, you got to practice it.
Oh,
Well, not a bad day.
actually, you know what? Real good day. Had the potential for the big guys. Had, you know, we snapped a couple off and lost a couple, but it's not always about big fish.
It's not. What today was about was showing you a different way to fish. Fish in the bottom of the river as opposed to the top. Sink tip nymphing, it works all times of year. It happens to be spring right now and we're fishing, but in the summertime, when it's hot and the fish aren't coming to the surface, or the time of day where there's no hatch coming off, it's a great way to fish a river.
Well, it's just a fact of nymphing. You know, 90% of a fish's diet is below surface, subsurface. So if you want to catch fish, you got to go deeper.
Yeah, you bet. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's show. When you get a chance to get out in the wild, make sure you take care.
And Conserve Our Waters done a great job here and everywhere we've been. It's getting better all the time.
It sure is. Yeah. See you next time.
When we take you sport fishing on the fly.